Aus and his tribe members of Kabba are rebelling to protect their culture and lands, but they're flattened by the foot of elephants. 12 hours earlier, they stood at the last defense point to protect Mecca from Abraha's advancing system. Abraha army, whose main goal was to take control of the main trading hub, Mecca demanded to surrender by force, which led to Meccans taking refuge in the Hada mountains. They wanted to end the fight without war, but the demands of the Abraha army were more than the control of Mecca. They wanted complete destruction of the Kabba tribe, the sacred stone enshrined there, and also for the people to give up their faith and become slaves of the army. This infuriated some and gave rise to the motive to fight. One night, Commander Musab, in charge of the Mecca soldiers, lifts the spirits of the soldiers to fight against the invaders. Another important warrior is Chief Abdul, one of the most respected leaders of Mecca. But Chief Abdul does not want to fight, as the Abraha army is far too mighty. He informs the people they only have two options, either surrender swiftly or become slaves. He suggests leaving the city before the army arrives, which is not accepted by some, leading to the formation of the army to protect the city. Captain Nizar is introduced as the most brilliant warrior, whose team Oz has joined. Nizar hints at Oz past and tells him not to dwell on it, but use those skills at war. Oz remembers how he hurried home to flee with his family, but as his father decided to stay and fight, he also decides to stay as he thinks he's not someone who deserves God's forgiveness, as long as he has the mark of a sinner on his body. He feels the time has come for him to pay them back, as they forgave him while he tried to rob them, and instead took him in as a son, giving him a life of peace. His wife Hind gives him her eyeshadow as a symbol of support. Suddenly, drums are heard with the news of sand clouds in the north. Musab motivates his army to fight. On the other hand, Abraha is informed about the army planning to fight back. Back in the mountains, the people who escaped see the sand clouds too, and get overwhelmed. Chief Abdul remembers his meeting with Abraha where he confronted him about the stolen camels. Abraha replied with the execution of the thieves as a sign of good faith. Abraha informs him, even though his act of good faith, his intentions are the same, to which Abdul answers that if he destroys God's shrine, he will be struck by God's wrath. At the army camp, a fight breaks out among the soldiers, but Nizar stops them. But Jurara, who started the fight, attacks Nizar. Just when Nizar gets him under control, another leader approaches and claims him to be from his clan. Oz and Jurara's eyes meet, hinting they know each other. When the leaders try to stop Jurara, he claims he's a mercenary who's here to be fed and not talk about faith. Saying so, he approaches Oz and asks him to reveal his past, shocking everyone. Oz tells his story of being kidnapped and enslaved by bandits. He explained how Jurara and he together tried to escape, but Jurara got caught. Jurara only thinks of ways to get meals and not faith. The leader asks Oz to tell his story as we all would want to hear. Oz tells the story of Noah and his ark. Jurara, however, thinks all of this is nonsense and tries to leave, but Oz asks him to fight alongside him, as he would not run this time but protect. Hearing so, Jurara draws his weapon and instigates a fight, and Oz too draws his sword. As the fight ends, Jurara agrees to fight with him on one condition, i.e. food. Honestly, I would too fight a war for food. Just when everyone is celebrating, the war drums blow with the invasion of the enemy. Meccans are petrified at the sight of the massive army. Just then, they spot a horse approaching them. Nizar moves forward to stop the horse from entering their base. The rider gives a final warning and their intentions to annihilate the army to claim the city if they do not surrender. Suddenly, a group of men spread fear among the people and flee. As everyone is getting scared and running away, Oz wears the eyeshadow Heen gave and gets ready to fight. He asks the few who are left to gather everyone's attention. Jurara suggests clanging their weapons together, which does the job. Oz shouts words of encouragement, and he succeeds in bringing the army back to their lines. Abraha on the other side praises them for not fleeing and thinks of putting them to the test and see if their courage lasts till sunrise. The elephants in the army start roaring and stomping. In the mountains, Hind expresses her fear, to which her father tells her to remember stories of their ancestors. She remembers the story of Moses and his miracle staff. She thinks she could be strong like Raheel, who followed Moses even in those difficult times and got freedom. In the battleground, the leaders plan to attack first with single combat. Abraha is informed of movement of their side, and he plans to accept the single combat. On the other side, Nizar, Oz, and Jurara move forward for battle. They get approached by three of the champions from the opposition. Oz steps forward first, but the first blow pushes him back, and he strikes a huge wound, making the giant fall to his knees. Oz tells him to admit defeat, but he still gets up. With no other choice, Oz strikes a clean shot, taking his life. Suddenly, the other two launch forward. Nizar and Jurara put up a good fight, defeating the other two, shocking the enemy. With that disgrace, the Abraha army launches forward for battle. An intense battle begins. Abraha wants recovery of the loss at any cost, so he sends all his forces to fight. The elephant army of Abraha reaches to fight, and Oz and Jurara run forward. They attack the elephant, but fail. But then, making Jurara the distraction, Oz plants a spear into the elephant. With this advancement, they blind the animal and kill it, but soon they realize everyone else is retreating but them. Just then, Nizar informs them about trapping the elephants in a tight spot, which might give them an advantage. While retreating, Musab gets trapped. He saves some men and accepts his fate, but suddenly the men come back to save him. Abraha decides to step into battle and see the elephant slayer. He decides to inflict pain on him and spare his life so he can live on to tell the tale. The Mecha army gets news about the change in formation. Oz decides to charge at Abraha, and Jirara follows him. Abraha realizes Oz's plan and decides to play. As Oz moves forward and gets trapped, Jirara comes to his rescue. As he does not want to leave him behind like before, Jirara tells him his decision to leave him behind before was right. Hearing so, Oz moves forward, but Jirara gets trapped and pierced through. Oz reaches Abraha and has a one-on-one battle with him. Oz manages to cut out the mask Abraha wears, revealing he has no nose. Voldemort Part 2. The no-nose startles Oz, giving Abraha an advantage. He gets a hold of Oz and beats him unconscious. Abraha orders to capture all the survivors and execute them. Oz falls and accepts defeat, and he thinks back to his family and asks for forgiveness. But then, suddenly he remembers his father's words and the tale of a miracle granted to the brave who refused to give up. He thinks back to the story of Prophet Hood. The people in the mountains get restless and plan to flee, but suddenly Oz gains consciousness and looks around to see the pitiful state of his people. Abraha comes forward and reveals that he knows about the people in the mountains. Oz and Nizar scream at Abraha for a second fight. Just then, Jirara takes up a sword and strikes one of Abraha's men. This gives Nizar a chance to attack, but sadly, he gets slaughtered. Abraha laughs in his glory, but Oz does not stand down. This leads to the starting scene of the elephant slaughter. Abraha demands Oz surrender, but Oz gives him a final warning instead. Suddenly, with a bird's whistle, everything comes to a still. The elephants stop obeying the Abraha army and back off. The elephants all face the same direction and kneel down. Suddenly, a huge flock of birds enter and make stone rain on the Abraha army, crushing everyone. Taking this chance, the Mecha army back out. The whole Abraha army panics and is crushed, but this only infuriates Abraha more. Abraha moves forward, calling out Oz. When he faces Oz, he declares even God's miracle could not harm him one bit. Suddenly, a thunderous sound is heard. The mountain beside him cracks and starts falling, crushing him in the process. The flock flies to the mountains, informing the people of the miracle that has occurred. Oz crosses through the tunnel left by the fallen mountain and witnesses a field full of corpses and realizes the miracle he has witnessed. He, along with his peers, look at the sky clearing while rejoicing in their victory. In the mountains, Abdul informs everyone that he senses the beginning of a new era. With this, they see a ray of light lit by the Mecha army and cheer in joy. Subscribe for more videos like this, turn on the notification, and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.